In his combative speech on Friday, amongst many names that Mr. Trump used to describe Iran, he referred to it as a rogue regime and a fanatical regime. He said it had violated the terms of the deal, and he accused Iran of sponsoring terrorism and proposed new sanctions. The nuclear agreement was brokered by what the European Union calls the E3+3. The UK, France, and Germany, along with the United States, Russia, and China. The group is also known as the P5+1, referring to the permanent members of the Security Council plus Germany. The Security Council endorsed the deal in a unanimous resolution.
Based on the factual record I have put forward, I am announcing today that we cannot and will not make this certification. We will not continue down a path whose predictable conclusion is more violence, more terror, and the very real threat of Iran's nuclear break-in.
Congress requires the President to certify every 90 days that Iran is upholding its part of the agreement. Mr. Trump had already recertified twice, but refused to sign a third time ahead of a Sunday deadline.
History has shown that the longer we ignore a threat, the more dangerous that threat becomes. For this reason, upon taking office, I've ordered a complete strategic review of our policy toward the rogue regime in Iran. And our participation can be canceled by me as president at any time.
There's not one single country in the world that can terminate a UN Security Council resolution that has been adopted, even more so adopted unanimously and implemented and verified, and with the rest of the international community continuing to support and implement it. So it is clearly not in the hands of any president of any country in the world to terminate an agreement of this sort. The President of the United States has many powers, not this one.
This is an international multilateral deal that has been ratified by the UN Security Council. It is a UN document. Is it possible for a president to unilaterally decertify this important international deal? This is not a document between Iran and the United States that he can treat it the way he likes. Respect and ethics are also important. We have always been determined to defend ourselves. Now, today, we are going to be much more determined to defend ourselves. We will continue to produce the arms that we need, and we will double that effort from today to build those weapons. Our weapons are for deterrence and defense, and we will continue to strengthen our defense capabilities.
Iran's President Hassan Rouhani has ordered the head of the country's atomic energy organization to start planning the development of nuclear-powered ships in reaction to what he called the United States' violation of their nuclear deal. Mogherini said the agreement, the JCPOA, had made the world safer, and there was no reason to believe Iran had failed to keep up its end of the bargain.
We are living dangerous times in the world. For once that we have an agreement that is functioning, that is working, that is delivering, the worst thing you can do is trying to dismantle it. Also because you would show the way to others that making deals actually is not worth it. Because the message that America would send to the rest of the world is that America cannot be trusted upon.
The other partners to the agreement dispute that Trump has the authority to end the deal, saying in their joint statement that the JCPOA was unanimously endorsed by the United Nations Security Council in Resolution 2231, joining Mogherini in what amounted to extraordinary isolation of the U.S. President, French President Emmanuel Macron, the United Kingdom's Prime Minister, Theresa May, and German Chancellor Angela Merkel issued a joint statement reaffirming their support for the accord. European diplomats warned that any such unilateral changes to the agreement were likely to trigger the deal's collapse and a return to a nuclear standoff in the Middle East. The International Atomic Energy Agency has repeatedly confirmed Iran's compliance with the JCPOA through its long-term verification and monitoring program. And Emmanuel Macron assured Mr. Rouhani of France's commitment to the deal in a cell phone call. The UK Foreign Minister Boris Johnson said, "This deal lives to fight another day." China has not spoken since Mr. Trump's speech at the time that I recorded this video, but previously had called on the U.S. to preserve the deal. Russia's foreign minister said it regretted Mr. Trump's decision, but did not expect it to stop the deal from being implemented. Mogherini also said, "The international community and the European Union with it has clearly indicated that the deal is and will continue to be in place."
Today I am announcing our strategy, along with several major steps we are taking to confront the Iranian regime's hostile actions and to ensure that Iran never, and I mean never, acquires a nuclear weapon. You mark my words. I win, Mexico pays. And I will have Mexico pay for that wall. Mark my words. And to ensure that Iran never, you mark my words, acquires a nuclear weapon. Mark my words. All restrictions on Iran's nuclear activity permanent under U.S. law. You mark my words.
Incorrect policies are not accepted here and will never be expected here.
Our policy is based on a clear-eyed assessment of the Iranian dictatorship, its sponsorship of terrorism, and its continuing aggression in the Middle East and all around the world. The flaws in the deal also include insufficient enforcement and near total silence on Iran's missile programs. Congress has already begun the work to address these problems. Key House and Senate leaders are drafting legislation that would amend the Iran Nuclear Agreement Review Act to strengthen enforcement.
The deal is not in the hands of the United States. As far as the qualification of Iran is concerned, long nights, weeks of discussions went into this.
The European Union continues to fully support the Iran nuclear deal and the full and strict implementation of all its provisions by all parties. The European Union, together with the rest of the international community, is committed to preserve it to the benefit of all, including the Iranian people.
Iran is under the control of a fanatical regime that seized power in 1979 and forced a proud people to submit to its extremist rule. In this effort, we stand in total solidarity with the Iranian regime's longest suffering victims, its own people. The citizens of Iran have paid a heavy price for the violence and extremism of their leaders. The Iranian people long to, and they just are longing, mark my words, to reclaim their country's proud history, its culture, its civilization, its cooperation with its neighbors.
Trump's speech and his talks about Iran's policy, only bad-mouthing and baseless accusations were made against the Iranian nation. I invite the President of the United States to better read the history books and the geography, and as well as international commitments, as well as respect and ethics, international ethics. Apparently, he is not in the know that the U.S. government, that more than 60 years ago, helped in a coup to bring back to power a dictatorship in Iran.
This radical regime has raided the wealth of one of the world's oldest and most vibrant nations and spread death, destruction, and chaos all around the globe.
Start writing horrible things about people and presenting it as reality. All right, don't forget we have a chaos quota, gang. Let's really it up.
Beginning in 1979, agents of the Iranian regime illegally seized the U.S. Embassy in Tehran and held more than 60 Americans hostage during the 444 days of the crisis. The Iranian-backed terrorist group Hezbollah twice bombed our embassy in Lebanon, once in 1983 and again in 1984. Another Iranian-supported bombing killed 241 Americans, service members they were, in their barracks in Beirut in 1983. In 1996, the regime directed another bombing of American military housing in Saudi Arabia, murdering 19 Americans in cold blood.
You forgot that you shot down a passenger Iranian airplane over the Persian Gulf waters.
Iranian proxies provided training to operatives who were later involved in al-Qaeda's bombing of the American embassies in Kenya, Tanzania, and 2 years later killing 224 people and wounding more than 4,000 others. The regime harbored high-level terrorists in the wake of the 9/11 attacks, including Osama bin Laden's son.
The government actually made some arrests and sent some al-Qaeda figures back to countries of origin, but the Revolutionary Guard was more supportive. Trump, in using the phrase regime, glosses over the debate within the country of Iran.
In Iraq and Afghanistan, groups supported by Iran have killed hundreds of American military personnel. The Iranian dictatorship's aggression continues to this day. The regime remains the world's leading state sponsor of terrorism and provides assistance to al-Qaeda, the Taliban, Hezbollah, Hamas, and other terrorist networks. It develops, deploys, and proliferates missiles that threaten American troops and our allies. It harasses American ships and threatens freedom of navigation in the Arabian Gulf and in the Red Sea.
How does a president doesn't know how to refer to an important internationally recognized Gulf, which is Persian Gulf? The same Persian Gulf that, unfortunately, U.S. warships keep coming and going. You targeted Iran's oil rigs in the Persian Gulf. You invaded this region continuously. Our arms, our missile programs, our missiles are for defense.
And it launches cyber attacks against our critical infrastructure, financial system, and military.
Long live the king. Long live the king. Long live the king. Long live the king.
The United States is far from the only target of the Iranian dictatorship's long campaign of bloodshed. The regime violently suppresses its own citizens, it shot unarmed student protesters in the street during the Green Revolution. This regime has fueled sectarian violence in Iraq and vicious civil wars in Yemen.
Saudi Arabia began its attack in March of 2015. Since that time, 2,568 children have been killed, 18,700 women, and 7,603 men. 2,354 children have been wounded, and many of those critically, along with 19,600 women and 15,687 men. 11,000 children have starved to death in just 2 years, and now one child dies every 10 minutes in Yemen. In just 700 days of war is 32,042, and that was the toll as of February 25th, 2017. What this war has done is it has destroyed the infrastructure, the livelihood, and the lives of every single civilian in Yemen. Not a single person has been left untouched by this war. And this is not a war that Yemen has waged on Saudi Arabia. This is a war that Saudi Arabia waged on the impoverished country of Yemen. This is not a war against terrorism. This is an action of genocide.
How come the arms that you give to the invaders in the region and use your warplanes and bombs to target the oppressed people of Yemen? With regard to those weapons and invasions, you are not protesting. The people of Iran, the people of Iraq, Iran, Yemen, and Syria, and the rest of the region will continue to resist terrorist groups that have been created by the United States, and they will not stand still until these terrorist groups have been terminated and annihilated. A regime that continues to oppress the people of Palestine, Lebanon, and others, you support that regime. Force that is fighting terrorism in the region and has never invaded any country, to use disrespectful words against this force.
In Syria, the Iranian regime has supported the atrocities of Bashar al-Assad's regime and condoned Assad's use of chemical weapons against helpless civilians, including many, many children. Given the regime's murderous past and present, we should not take lightly its sinister vision for the future. The regime's two favorite chants are death to America and death to Israel.
You are not happy with the slogans made by the Iranian nation, then stop your hostile attitude toward Iran. Is not against the people of America. It is against the wrong policies of the United States. We do respect the people of America, even today. It is up to you to learn how to treat other nations. If you do that, the people of Iran also know very well how to treat you well.
The United States and the United Nations Security Council sought over many years to stop Iran's pursuit of nuclear weapons.
If there hadn't been a problem, we wouldn't have spent 12 years trying to resolve it.
More than 2 years ago, exactly in July 2015, the entire international community welcomed the result of 12 years of intense negotiations on the Iranian nuclear program.
The previous administration lifted these sanctions just before what would have been the total collapse of the Iranian regime.
There is little evidence that the Iranian government was on the verge of total collapse, though it was certainly struggling because of international sanctions. The Obama administration had been able to win broad international support for crippling sanctions precisely because it convinced Russia and China, two major Iranian partners, that the pressure was designed to curb Iran's nuclear ambitions and force the government into negotiations. If the government had started to teeter because of the sanctions, especially if it was perceived as part of an American campaign of regime change, that support probably would have been withdrawn by China and Russia.
Keep in mind that with your incorrect words, you just made us more united than ever. Now, today, we are going to be much more determined to defend ourselves. We will continue to produce the arms that we need, and we will double that effort from today.
Through the deeply controversial 2015 nuclear deal with Iran. This deal is known as the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, or JCPOA. As I have said many times, the Iran deal was one of the worst and most one-sided transactions the United States has ever entered into.
There's a bee in my bonnet, hello, hello, a bee in my bonnet, hello. There's a bee in my bonnet, hello, hello, a bee in my bonnet, hello.
It is a multilateral agreement which was unanimously endorsed by the United Nations Security Council Resolution 2231. It is not a bilateral agreement. It does not belong to any single country, and it is not up to any single country to terminate it. The scope of the agreement relates to the nuclear program and is being fulfilled. We cannot afford, as international community, as Europe for sure, to dismantle a nuclear agreement that is working and delivering, especially now. The deal has prevented and continues to prevent, will continue to prevent, Iran from developing nuclear weapons. The Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action represents a key and functioning pillar of the international non-proliferation architecture that is even more important to preserve at a time of acute nuclear threat. This is a plan of action that sets things to be done, commitments, nuclear-related commitments, and only nuclear-related commitments, and that is being implemented.
The same mindset that produced this deal is responsible for years of terrible trade deals that have sacrificed so many millions of jobs in our country to the benefit of other countries. We need negotiators who will much more strongly represent America's interests. The nuclear deal threw Iran's dictatorship a political and economic lifeline, providing urgently needed relief from the intense domestic pressure the sanctions had created.
There's a bee in my bonnet, hello, hello, a bee in my bonnet, hello. There's a bee in my bonnet, hello, hello, a bee in my bonnet, hello. Would you be my song and I'll be your sonnet? You be my chair and I'll surely sit on it. I'll bring the gin and you bring the tonic. A bee in my bonnet, hello. There's a bee in my bonnet, hello.
You also gave the regime an immediate financial boost, and over $100 billion its government could use to fund terrorism. The regime also received a massive cash settlement of $1.7 billion from the United States, a large portion of which was physically loaded onto an airplane and flown into Iran. Just imagine the sight of those huge piles of money being hauled off by the Iranians, waiting at the airport for the cash. I wonder where all that money went.
Trump often suggests the United States gave $100 billion to Iran, but these were Iranian assets that had been frozen. The Treasury Department has estimated that once Iran fulfills other obligations, it would have about $55 billion left. For its part, the Central Bank of Iran said the number was actually $32 billion, not $55 billion. Iran has also complained that it cannot actually move the money back to Iran because foreign banks won't touch it for fear of U.S. sanctions and their U.S. exposure. As for the $1.7 billion in cash, this was related to the settlement of a decades-old claim between the two countries. This was nothing new. An initial payment of $400 million was handed over on January 17, 2016, the same day Iran's government agreed to release 4 American detainees, including the Washington Post's own Jason Rezaian. The timing, which U.S. officials insisted was a coincidence, suggested the cash could be viewed as a ransom payment for the freedom of 4 American citizens. But the initial cash payment was Iran's own money. In the 1970s, the then pro-Western Iranian government under the Shah paid $400 million for U.S. military equipment. But the equipment was never delivered because the two countries broke off relations after the seizure of the American hostages at the U.S. Embassy in Iran. So this is money that Iran had given the United States in trade for a product that they did not receive, and in any business deal, if the product is not received, the money is refunded. It had apparently been frozen. 2 other payments totaling $1.3 billion in negotiated agreement on the interest owed on the aforementioned $400 million, which came a few weeks later.
Incorrect statements, unjustified, false accusations, baseless accusations against Iran, against the Iranian people. You cannot create discord between the government and the people, or between the people and the popular leadership of this country. You cannot sow discord.
Worst of all, the deal allows Iran to continue developing certain elements of its nuclear program, and importantly, in just a few years, as key restrictions disappear, Iran can sprint towards a rapid nuclear weapons breakout. In other words, we got weak inspections in exchange for no more than a purely short-term and temporary delay in Iran's path to nuclear weapons.
Trump does not mention that under the agreement, Iran is permanently prohibited from acquiring nuclear weapons and will be subject to certain restrictions and additional monitoring indefinitely. Certainly, provisions of the nuclear aspect of the deal do not last indefinitely, but virtually all phase out between years 10 and 25. It's doubtful Iran would have agreed to an indefinite ban on nuclear activity, given that it has a right to have a non-nuclear program under the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty.
It is a robust deal that provides guarantees and a strong monitoring mechanism so that Iran's nuclear program is and will remain exclusively for civilian purposes only.
This, as President of the United States, is unacceptable. In other countries, they think in terms of 100-year intervals, not just a few years at a time.
Long live the king. Long live the king. Long live the king. Long live the king.
The saddest part of the deal for the United States is that all of the money was paid up front, which is unheard of, rather than at the end of the deal, when they have shown they've played by the rules. But what's done is done, and that's why we are where we are.
What we heard from the American officials tonight were a repeat of incorrect rhetoric, baseless allegations. The Iranian nation will never kneel down, will never give up. Iran will not hesitate, will give them a fitting response.
The International Atomic Energy Agency, the IAEA, has verified 8 times that Iran is implementing all its nuclear-related commitments. There have been no violations of any of the commitments included in the agreement.
The Iranian regime has committed multiple violations of the agreement. For example, on 2 separate occasions, they have exceeded the limit of 130 metric tons of heavy water.
Trump claims that the Iranian regime has committed multiple violations in the agreement. Well, Trump is correct that Iran twice exceeded the deal's limit on heavy water, but supporters of the deal say that it shows JCPOA is working, and perhaps Iran tried to take advantage of fuzzy language in the agreement. However, they were immediately caught by the international inspectors. When the partners objected, Iran immediately came back into compliance.
Until recently, the Iranian regime has also failed to meet our expectations in its operation of advanced centrifuges.
As for these centrifuges, the deal limits both the number and types of centrifuges Iran is permitted to use. Again, Iran may have taken advantage of ambiguous limits, roughly 10 advanced centrifuges, by operating slightly more than the number. The dispute for the moment also appears to have been resolved.
The Iranian regime has also intimidated international inspectors into not using the full inspection authorities that the agreement calls for. Iranian officials and military leaders have repeatedly claimed they will not allow inspectors onto military sites, even though the international community suspects some of those sites were part of Iran's clandestine nuclear weapons program. There are also many people who believe that Iran is dealing with North Korea.
Trump claims that Iran is dealing with North Korea. Now, this was a puzzling statement. The phrasing suggests there is not enough evidence to claim that Iran has dealings with North Korea, but the intelligence agencies will keep looking. But it raises the question about why the president made the assertion in the first place.
I am going to instruct our intelligence agencies to do a thorough analysis and report back their findings beyond what they have already reviewed. By its own terms, the Iran deal was supposed to contribute to regional and international peace and security. And yet, while the United States adheres to our commitment under the deal,
there's a bee in my bonnet, hello, hello, a bee in my bonnet, hello. There's a bee in my bonnet, hello, hello, a bee in my bonnet, hello. Would you be...
The Iranian regime continues to fuel conflict, terror, and turmoil throughout the Middle East and beyond. Importantly, Iran is not living up to the spirit of the deal. So today, in recognition of the increasing menace posed by Iran, and after extensive consultations with our allies, I am announcing a new strategy to address the full range of Iran's destructive actions.
With regard to the JCPOA, we see this an international deal, a multilateral deal. As long as our rights are served, our interests are secured, if we continue to benefit from this deal, we will continue to cooperate with the IAEA within the framework of international law and the UN Nuclear Agency.
We believe we have a collective responsibility to preserve it for our own collective security. The United States domestic process, and I underline domestic, following today's announcement of President Trump, is now in the hands of the United States Congress. The JCPOA is not a domestic issue, but a UN Security Council resolution.
We want to rebuild the World Trade Center as the World Trade Center, but better. A little bit taller, a lot stronger, just plain better.
Long live the king, 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 long live the king.
If we rebuild the World Trade Center in the form of a skeleton, Freedom Tower, the terrorists win. First, we will work with our allies to counter the regime's destabilizing activity and support for terrorist proxies in the region. Second, we will place additional sanctions on the regime to block their financing of terror. Third, we will address the regime's proliferation of missiles and weapons that threaten its neighbors' global trade and freedom of navigation. And finally, we will deny the regime all paths to a nuclear weapon.
He wants to add clauses to the JCPOA in cooperation with the Congress. He doesn't know that the JCPOA, that nothing can be added, no clauses, no bills can be added. America is now more than ever isolated when it comes to the JCPOA.
The international community and the European Union with it has clearly indicated that the deal is and will continue to be in place.
Today, I'm also announcing several major steps my administration has taken in pursuit of this strategy. The execution of our strategy begins with the long overdue step of imposing tough sanctions on Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. The Revolutionary Guard is the Iranian Supreme Leader's corrupt personal terror force and militia.
The IRGC is a powerful force that is popular among the Iranian people, and the IRGC has always been standing behind the Iranian people before the imposed Iraqi war on Iran, fought against anti-Iran agents after the revolution, fought them head-on.
It has hijacked large portions of Iran's economy and seized massive religious endowments to fund war and terror abroad. This includes arming the Syrian dictator, supplying proxies and partners with missiles and weapons to attack civilians in the region, and even plotting to bomb a popular restaurant right here in Washington, D.C. I am authorizing the Treasury Department to further sanction the entire Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps for its support for terrorism and to apply sanctions to its officials, agents, and affiliates. I urge our allies to join us in taking strong actions to curb Iran's continued dangerous and destabilizing behavior, including thorough sanctions outside the Iran deal that target the regime's ballistic missile program in support for terrorism and all of its destructive activities. You mark my words. Finally, on the grave matter of Iran's nuclear program, since the signing of the nuclear agreement, the regime's dangerous aggression has only escalated. At the same time, it has received massive sanctions relief while continuing to develop its missiles program.
Apparently, he has forgotten that during the resistance, during the uprising of the Iranian nation for democracy and Islamic Republic, the country that did throw most of its support to this dictatorship in Iran was the United States. President Trump has forgotten the fact that after the victory of the Islamic Revolution, and in the early days of the revolution, the plot by the United States was another coup. Of course, one more time, they tried in 1981, they tried to repeat it. Apparently, they have forgotten the fact that during the imposed Iraqi war on Iran in the 1980s, it was the United States that backed the invaders. They also forgot the fact that when Iran was being bombarded by missiles and being chemically attacked in Sardasht and Halabja, a statement that the U.S. was supposed to make in order to condemn the invaders and support the oppressed, the invaded, they did the opposite. You forgot that the wars in the region have been created by you. You forgot how you treated the people of Afghanistan, Iraq, and Syria and others.
That is why I am directing my administration to work closely with Congress and our allies to address the deal's many serious flaws so that the Iranian regime can never threaten the world with nuclear weapons. These include the deal's sunset clauses that in just a few years will eliminate key restrictions on Iran's nuclear program.
What changes does Mr. Trump want? Well, he is seeking the end to the nuclear deal's so-called sunset clauses, one of which allows for the lifting of restrictions on Iran's nuclear enrichment program after the year 2025, a year which Donald Trump refers to as in a very short time.
We hope that these new measures directed at the Iranian dictatorship will compel the government to reevaluate its pursuit of terror at the expense of its people. We hope that our actions today will help bring about a future of peace, stability, and prosperity in the Middle East, a future where sovereign nations respect each other and their own citizens. pray for a future where young children, American and Iranian, Muslim, Christian, and Jewish, can grow up in a world free from violence, hatred, and terror. And until that blessed day comes, we will do what we must to keep America safe. Iran has also entered into lucrative business contracts with other parties to the agreement. When the agreement was finalized in 2015, among other conditions, this law requires the president or his designee to certify that the suspension of sanctions under the deal is appropriate and proportionate to measure and other measures taken by Iran to terminate its illicit nuclear program.
You mark my words. I win, Mexico pays. And I will have Mexico pay for that wall. Mark my words.
However, in the event we are not able to reach a solution working with Congress and our allies, then the agreement will be terminated.
When it comes to hatching new plots against the Iranian nation, we are making it here absolutely clear. We are going to stand against terrorism in the region, and we will continue to fight terrorism. The same terrorist groups that this same gentleman last year during his presidential campaign said America, the American government was behind the creation of ISIS or Daesh. Our nation will continue to stand against the plotters. The U.S. wants to distance the world from Iran and the JCPOA. They want to stop Iran's economic growth. Despite what Trump said tonight, the people of Iran will continue to make efforts to develop this country economically.
Mr. Trump used very strong language in his speech. Can you explain to Europeans why it's a good idea to have a deal with a country like this? Mr. Trump's speech opens a domestic political process, and we are confident that there was enough detail in this deal to make it stick. And our decisions since haven't been based on any trust, they've been based on observable verification. The idea of reopening it or renegotiating parts of this deal implicates that the accord no longer exists. So there's no political space to actually do this.
Although some advocates of the deal had feared that Mr. Trump would withdraw the U.S. entirely, he has essentially referred the matter to Congress. Congress now has 60 days to decide whether to pull out of the nuclear deal by reimposing sanctions.
President Trump, Donald, Sarah and I are absolutely delighted to welcome you and Melania to the Prime Minister's residence in Jerusalem, the eternal capital of the Jewish people, the united capital of the Jewish state. We've known each other for many years, and it's always good to see you. But it's also wonderful to see the blossoming friendship between our two beautiful wives, Sarah and Melania. You're so welcome here, and we're so pleased to see you. We're honored to have you in our home. You've been today, Mr. President, to the Western Wall, one of the holiest sites of Judaism. You've been to the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, one of the holiest sites of Christianity. We protect the Christian sites as no one else does anywhere in this region. We protect Christian sites, Muslim sites, obviously Jewish sites. We're committed to the freedom of all faiths and to the rights of all. Mr. President, I appreciate the fact that you went to the Western Wall, and you're the first acting president who's done that. The people of Israel applaud you for it. We had a terrific discussion today, and when I say terrific. It encompasses everything. We could talk about deregulation. We could talk about economics. I think we quote each other. We understand each other and so much of the things that we wish to accomplish for both our countries. But I want to thank you especially today for your deep commitment to Israel's security, its well-being, and its future. I have no doubt that as we work together, you and I, the alliance between our countries will grow ever stronger. I want you to know how much we appreciate the change in American policy on Iran, which you enunciated so clearly just an hour ago. I want you to know how much we appreciate your bold decision to act against the use of chemical weapons in Syria. And I want to tell you also how much we appreciate the reassertion of American leadership in the Middle East. I look forward to working closely with you to confront the dangers we face together in this violent and volatile Middle East. I believe that together we could roll back Iran's march of aggression and terror in this region, and we can thwart Iran's unbridled ambition to become a nuclear weapon state. I also look forward to working closely with you to advance peace in our region, because you have noted so succinctly that common dangers are turning former enemies into partners. And that's where we see something new and potentially something very promising. It won't be simple, but for the first time in many years, and Mr. President, for the first time in my lifetime, I see a real hope for change. The Arab leaders who you met yesterday could help change the atmosphere, and they could help create the conditions for a realistic peace. These are all great signs on your historic visit. It's a visit that I think has echoed down the ages, because the great Abraham Lincoln is reported to have said that there was no city on earth he so much desired to see as Jerusalem. Well, Mr. President Donald, there's no city on earth where you are more welcome than right here with us in Jerusalem. Welcome to Jerusalem. Welcome to Israel.
Thank you very much, and it's a great honor to be with my good friend, Prime Minister Netanyahu, and of course, Sarah, thank you. And also thank you for that beautiful tour. Melania is still talking about it. So thank you very much. You honored me and Melania by being one of the first world leaders to visit the White House, as you know. And we had a very good and sound discussion. And now you honor us again by welcoming us to your home on my first trip abroad as the President of the United States. This is a land filled with beauty, wonder, and the Spirit of God. I've been amazed by the glorious and beautiful monuments and holy sites and the generosity of your incredible people.
Thank you.
Because it's all about the people. I was deeply moved by my visit today to the Western Wall. Words fail to capture the experience. It will leave an impression on me forever. Today we reaffirm the unbreakable bond of friendship between Israel and the United States. A friendship built on our shared love of freedom, our shared belief in human dignity, and our shared hope for an Israel at lasting peace. We want Israel to have peace. But we are more than friends. We are great allies. We have so many opportunities in front of us. But we must seize them together. We must take advantage of the situation. And there are many, many things that can happen now that would never have been able to happen before, and we understand that very well. That includes advancing prosperity, defeating the evils of terrorism, and facing the threat of an Iranian regime that is threatening the region and causing so much violence and suffering. During my travels, I have seen many hopeful signs that lead me to believe that we can truly achieve a more peaceful future for this region and for people of all faiths and all beliefs, and frankly, all over the world. In my visit to Saudi Arabia, I met with many leaders of the Arab and Muslim world, including King Solomon, who treated us so beautifully and really wants to see great things happen for the world. He really does. I got to know him well, and he really does. These leaders voice concerns we all share about ISIS, about Iran's rising ambitions and rolling back its gains, and about the menace of extremism that has spread through too many parts of the Muslim world. I'm encouraged that they pledge cooperation to confront terrorism and the hateful ideology that drives it so hard. America welcomes the action and support of any nation willing to do the hard but vital work in eradicating the violent ideologies that have caused so much needless bloodshed and killing here and all over the world. We are willing to work together. I believe that a new level of partnership is possible and will happen, one that will bring greater safety to this region, greater security to the United States, and greater prosperity to the world. This includes a renewed effort at peace between the Israelis and the Palestinians. And I thank the Prime Minister for his commitment to pursuing the peace process. He's working very hard at it. It's not easy. I've heard it's one of the toughest deals of all, but I have a feeling that we're going to get there eventually. I hope. I'm certain we will have very productive discussions, and we're going to have very productive discussions, in my opinion, with the leaders of other nations also. And I feel strongly about that, because there's a lot of love out there, and people from all nations, even nations that you would be surprised to hear, they want to stop the killing. They've had enough. America stands ready to assist in every way we can. Our deep and lasting friendship will only grow deeper and stronger as we work together in the days ahead. I thank you again for hosting us in this beautiful and ancient land. Truly, it's a land of wonders, and it's my honor to be here with you. Sarah, thank you. Bibi, thank you. I appreciate it very much. Great honor. Thank you.
Thank you.
When I served in Afghanistan, I served with women, I served with Muslims, and I served with Latinos, all groups that Donald Trump has maligned and even threatened. All of those folks actually donned the uniform. They actually served their country. As far as we can see, as veterans and in the military community, Donald Trump only seems interested in serving himself. I think we all believe in the veterans community that it would be fantastic if Trump had decided he was interested in donating any of his vast wealth, which he loves to talk about so much, to veterans organizations in any substantive way before he decided he wanted to be the next commander-in-chief. We are not interested in making a deal as veterans when it comes to the security and safety of our brothers and sisters still in uniform. We have seen over and over Trump say reckless, bigoted things that we know will put our colleagues in harm's way and will make this country and Americans less safe.
Thank you.
Long live the king.
God bless America.
Long live the king. Long live the king. Long live the king. the king. Long live the king. Long live the king. Long